Welcome to Maryville Tonight. I'm your host, Reiss Wegman, and I can't think of anyone better to start our first show off with than our first guest here. You might know him as the Snapchat guy, but I don't know him as Chris Reimer, and here he is.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, Chris.
Yes.
So this show is all about, taking a faculty or staff member and getting a little bit of a better look at them, look into their lives before they're in Maryville or stuff they do outside of Maryville, and just figuring them out a little bit better.
Let's talk about
Let's talk about it. So I would say most people on campus know who you are or know a little bit about what you do, right?
I would say it's funny because I would say 50% of the students actually don't know my first name, but everyone knows me as Snapchat guy.
Right.
Unless someone calls me Snapchat man, I always consider that a promotion.
Yeah. All right. So for those of you that don't, we'll talk about what Chris does here a little bit later, but we're going to move into things you might not know already. So growing up, probably your earliest memory, what did you want to be when you were older?
I wanted to be like my grandfather, who had a window manufacturing company that he and a few partners started in the year 1949. Wow. So as I was growing up in the 1970s, my grandmother was sometimes babysitting me, and so she would take me to the factory. She would take me to the office, the business, and it was called Reimer Company. So my name was on the door, and I recognized that and thought, business seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
It seemed pretty cool what my grandfather was doing. And when you're a kid and you're just looking at all these people milling about and doing all this different work, by the way, all with no computers or cell phones or anything, so it looked much different than it would today.
Right.
It just amazed me, and I thought business seems really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And so there was that, and then there was also the fact that I was good at math. Okay. So I just was always, math just came naturally. I always got, straight A's in math, and then like in English and that sort of thing, maybe
right.
B's or something like that. So those two things eventually led to a career, which we'll probably get a chance to talk about.
So you're big into math, so you're in high school now.
Yeah.
Still doing good at math. So you're in high school, whenever you're deciding where you're going to go to college, how did that all go? What did you want to major in? Walk us through that a little bit.
Knowing that I thought business was a cool thing, I wanted to major in accounting.
Okay.
Because accounting is the kind of education where it gives you a really good base, and every single kind of business needs the help of an accountant. So I thought to myself, maybe this would be an opportunity for me to make myself indispensable, to all businesses and make it easier to get a job. Maybe it would result in me going to work for the family business, that sort of thing. So, there was even an accounting class offered senior year in high school, and I took it, and I got an A, and it was no problem. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm going to go to Marquette, and I'm going to study accounting.
All right, yeah. So you're up in Milwaukee, you're at Marquette, you're doing accounting, you graduate from there, and you become a CPA pretty quick, right?
So the CPA exam, the toughest of the professional exams, it took me 2 times to pass it. In 4 parts, I passed the first 2 parts. The first time I took it, I failed 2 parts, and I'll be honest, it's because I didn't study for them. Yeah. I still came close, but I had friends who passed all 4 parts, so I was a little jealous. But became a CPA pretty quick after that. And one thing to note too is, like, during my entire college existence, I was not questioning my choice at all. I declared my major right away.
Right, you were sure.
And unlike a lot of you guys where you change majors because you're figuring out different things you like or dislike, nothing. I was accounting the whole way.
Yeah, and that's awesome. That's quite a transition from wherever you ended up going after you were accounting for a while.
Well, just knowing now that I'm in marketing, like there were no signals back then. And marketing was quite a bit different. It was about a lot more about TV advertising. There was no such thing as blogging or social media or anything like that. So it was just a lot different back then. Yeah. And so there was never, I took marketing classes as part of being a business major, but I never thought, that seems like so interesting, and why am I doing accounting? Like, I didn't start thinking about that, frankly, until I was in my late 30s.
Okay, so let's go. So you're an accountant. How did you transition into going into social media? What's that jump look like?
So it was starting this little side hustle, this funny t-shirt business that I had. It was called Rizzo Tees. Okay. And so I started that in 2007, and I just got really into it. I was very possessed to make this thing a success. I am not a great artist, but I was able to, with the help of some graphic designers, design 32 amazing t-shirts. I had a company for a lot of money, build myself a website, much different than today where you can make a site in 1 hour, on Shopify or whatever. And I debuted my website in actually late 2008. And so the day it debuted, it was November. It was actually October 31st, 2008. So we put the site live, and it's greatly triumphant, but nobody ordered anything.
Yeah.
And I had spent a lot of money getting it ready, and so. If you've ever been on a website and you're not using ad blocker, even this day, you'll see, banner ads or this or that.
Right.
I had no money to even run banner ads. And that had been kind of my plan. It was to run ads. Social media was not part of the equation. So it was November 5th that I finally panicked and thought, okay, how am I going to get people to come to my website? So it was November 5th, 2008 that I joined Twitter. And it's kind of like the rest is history,
Right.
I mean, I think I joined Facebook at some point soon after that, but
Twitter is really where you're going.
Twitter is where it started.
Okay.
It's one of my least favorite things to do now, probably just because it can be a real hot mess on Twitter if you've ever spent any time there. But and I think they're leaving a lot on the table by not fixing spam and hate speech and all that unfun stuff. But it definitely was where I sort of made my name, I guess.
Right. I mean, and definitely you did make your name. I mean, you were voted most influential Twitter user in STL 2010 and 11 by STLtweets.com. Riverfront Times, you're the 2011 best Twitterer. You were a top 5 Twitter user in the world to follow at one point. I mean, various other awards too.
Yeah.
Big Twitter guy.
Yeah, I mean, it was something where I joined it thinking I need this because I need to generate some awareness for my business. But then once I joined it, I actually quite often found myself forgetting to talk about the business. Forgetting to say, hey, if you notice I have this t-shirt or I'm debuting a new design, I just jumped on there and talked with people just like you.
Right.
And I just found it, I loved having conversations with people. I loved meeting people, which is like people older, like the generation older than me would say that's not meeting people.
Right.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
But then when you actually do get a chance to meet people in person that you've met online, I still remember the first time I did that, where there was someone, a friend I'd made online, and then here in St. Louis at a tweet up or whatever they used to call them, and she was there, and I gave her a hug. It was like I knew her, and that was real. That was very, very real. And then that person went and bought a t-shirt. And then what I also noticed is just all the time I was spending interacting with people online, those people were buying some t-shirts. And I thought, okay, this is exactly what I expected to happen. This is what's supposed to happen with all this time being spent. But all along the way, I was also learning a lot about communication. You're a comm major. I was not a comm major. And comm is so different now than it was back then. Back then it was I want to work in radio or I want to work in TV.
Right, and radio was totally plausible back then. I mean, that was...
Plausible, a good way to put it. Yeah, I mean, and radio is still a place where you can work, but I mean, now you can have your own podcast and just make your own, the gatekeepers are gone. If you want to work hard, set cameras up and create something, you can do it. And you just have to keep going and don't quit, and eventually sponsors can come and all that fun stuff. So for me, it was all that time being spent on Twitter and then going and meeting people in person that I started to discover that I created a talent for myself, the ability to interact with people online and influence them into some sort of behavior. In the case of my business, it was buying something. In the case of social media in general, I started actually giving public presentations on social media. Do you like public speaking?
I'm a big public speaker.
You are, good.
Yeah, anytime anybody will look at me, so.
I, like most human beings, thoroughly disliked it and was
Really?
scared, just frightened, totally frightened. But then I remember when I gave my first social media presentation in public, I remember sitting at the table waiting to be introduced, and a new friend, someone I had met on social media and then in person, leaned over to me, which all helpful people always do right before a speech, and said, "You nervous?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And it was I couldn't believe it. I still remember that moment as well as another one where I thought, maybe I'm onto something here. Maybe this is my future. This is a very special, it was like an enchanted moment.
Right. And I think, anytime you find a niche in something you're doing, there's always that one turning point moment where you realize, you're not going to be scared anymore. You're going to go at this 100%. You just kind of have a whole different mental attitude that you've never had about it before that you go into it with.
Yes, but I'm a little slow sometimes. So it took me a few pivotal moments.
Okay.
And so those moments I previously described were some, but then there were two other moments. It was two telephone conversations that I had. One was with a friend of mine who I eventually went to work for at a local firm called Falk Harrison. So it was my friend John Falk. And another one was my web designer, the company that helped build the Reiss Tees website. Two separate conversations that I had where we started talking about social media. And they were asking me a lot of questions. John Falk was like, "What? I don't understand what I'm looking at online. What is? I don't understand Twitter." It's just like, if you don't understand, it looks like a hot mess, right? And so I spent like an hour explaining, like just kept talking. And at the end of that conversation, he said, "You could do this for a living." I was still a CPA. I was still a chief financial officer.
Okay.
And I was like, that seemed silly. I was like 38 or 39 at the time. It didn't seem like something, it seemed irresponsible to try to change careers. You know, I've got two kids and the mortgage and all that fun stuff. And so then I had another conversation, literally waiting on hold with my web designer, waiting to talk to someone else at their company. And he said the same thing. He's like, "Oh, you could do this for a living." So it was like two people even just sort of like pistol whipped me over the head with it. And I was like, okay, this is fascinating. What's my next move? How do I even go about this? And eventually landed that first job, and I went to my wife and said, "So I've got this opportunity to go and be chief marketing officer at this small agency, and it's a big pay cut. What do you think?" You know, and you know what she did? She was like, "I support you." And then she turned around and was probably, you know, but it worked. It worked. I mean, I only spent 9 months. That was a crazy place and was not worth any more of my time, but I ended up moving to Falk Harrison. And I spent almost 4 years there, and so that was really the start of my marketing career.
Okay, so then how from there did you end up at Maryville?
Yeah, it's a good question. So after Falk Harrison, I decided that I wanted to work just for a company. So instead of working for an agency where I was going to be working for lots of different companies, which was great experience, I wanted to work at one company in one industry, and I wanted to focus on that.
It's a whole different game.
Yeah, because then you can like become an expert at that instead of being kind of like the hired gun that goes everywhere, you know. And so so I went to work for Caldy's Coffee, which is a coffee company here in St. Louis. And we used to have Caldy's on campus here, and it did not go well.
Okay.
It didn't go well at all. It was really, really just a bad experience. I mean, I found out 9 months in that I was going to have to get a new job. And I really didn't like that because I was planning on spending more than 9 months there.
Right.
And
so you thought this was your move.
Thought this was like the dream job, you know, and I love coffee. I mean, I drink coffee 365 days a year. I like the people that I worked with, but then after 9 months, I mean, it's more than we can even talk about today, to be honest. But it was a really, really hard time for me. It was really cool. They allowed me to look for a job and stay employed with the company while I looked for a job. So they didn't just say go. So I have to give them props for that. I don't have a lot of other nice things to say, but I will say that. And so when I started looking for this job, it's one of the first times ever that I was able to do a completely public job search. Completely public. Except, I guess, for the first job out of college. Yeah. So every other one, you're like, go to your employer, I have a doctor's appointment, you know, and then you leave to go do the interview. Yeah. And eventually they're probably like, are you dying? Like, how many doctor's appointments can you go to, you know? Because you're conducting these searches in secret.
Right, you're sneaking around.
Yeah, sneaking around.
You feel kind of guilty and it's stressful.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, you do. Guilty, I mean, you don't want to get caught or anything, you know?
Probably a better way to put
With the cell phones now, too, anyone can take a picture of you anywhere. So, I mean, but in this case, they supported me getting a new job because they wanted me to leave. And so, to be honest, and so I wrote a blog post and I declared my free agency. So I took like a sports term and I said, Chris Reimer's for hire. And
that's cool.
It was really cool. Yeah. But what I did was I explained exactly what I thought I was looking for. I also had a lot of meetings with people, like right at the beginning, just people that I knew and trusted and that could point me in a direction. And so I remember one guy asked me, you know, the most intelligent question that I didn't have an answer for yet. He said, well, so what do you want to do? Or what do you want? You know, and I blurted out, I just want to feel better. Because I was really like down in the dumps. I was not in a good spot. And so he's like, okay, that's cool. I want you to work on that, but I also want you to work on, like a better answer to that question. I want you to think about what type of organization you want to go work for next. So I want you to really think about this. And I didn't arrive at the answer higher ed. I did not arrive at the answer Maryville. But the blog post that I did spread far and wide, and it worked. I started receiving a lot of inbound inquiries saying, hey, we'd like to talk to you. And that's what you want when you're nearly unemployed, And so it was Dr. Rebecca Dorman, who I knew previously, who said, hey, have you seen this job? And she shot me a link, and it was a link to this position. And I was like, no, I hadn't. And it's so far away from home. I live in the city, and I have to drive all the way out here. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, and beggars can't be choosy, and I thought I should go explore this. Thank goodness that I did, because this has been the best job that I've ever had, the best boss, honestly, that I've ever had. And what was really cool, too, is that, so Dr. Dorman, who, if you haven't taken any classes with her, you're going to, she was like Facebook messaging me, like selling me on the university. Like, we need you on campus. And I had no idea. I mean, we were posting one Instagram picture a month before I got here. And then in April 2015, I posted 38 pictures. So I turned up the volume fast, So then she was selling me. Then she was with my boss separately saying, haul this guy in for an interview right now. She was, my boss is busy. She's a busy person. But Dr. Dorman didn't give up. And she worked both angles and got us together. And I'm just so glad that it happened.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to be here. This is the best job I've ever had. It's so great. And it's funny too, because a lot of the same kinds of ideas that I was trying to execute on at my previous job, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work. No one got it.
Yeah.
Same things here, and it works great. So strange.
That's awesome. Yeah. Place to be, I guess.
I suppose.
So for real quick, just for people who might not know, give everybody a rundown. What do you all do here? What's your day look like?
Yeah. So I have a new job title. I'm still working on memorizing. I believe that I'm now the Director of Creative Services. So what that means is I manage all of the main social media channels for Maryville. I also consult for the other ones. If PowerPrint has a question, I'm there for you. If, Maryville Athletics, try to be there to help them. And then I manage our 2-person video production team. And I now manage our content writer, who is responsible for the twice-a-year published Maryville magazine. So it's basically trying to manage the digital public face of the university.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, and then a few years ago, you wrote a book.
I did. We forgot about that.
Real quick?
We can, for sure. So it came out at a super duper ironic time. It came out 2 weeks after that awful day that I found out I was losing my job.
Yeah.
It's a book it's called Happy Work. So happy and work scrunched together, one word. Available on Amazon and fine bookstores everywhere. So it's a book about workplace culture. It's a business parable, so it's a piece of fiction. And it's about the worst company in the world that you could ever imagine working for. And I try to put you right in the center of it, because I want you, especially young people, to understand what it means to strive for happiness and fulfillment at work. So I do that by showing a really awful example of a company and what happens when a really good person finds themselves in that bad situation, and what can happen. I had no idea that I was nearly predicting my own future when I wrote the book. It was kind of odd, but it that's probably the coolest thing I've ever done.
Yeah,
just because, awesome. Writing a book, and I'm not much of a writer, but it happened once. I just blacked out and I wrote it, and it turned out really well. I'm super proud of it. It got amazing reviews, and I just, couldn't be more thrilled. There's no sequel coming, though.
Okay.
I think I might be done.
Well, Chris, it's been great. You've quite a story. Thank you for coming on.
Man. Thanks for your time.
It's been awesome. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to be here. Busy guy. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Go Saints.
Go Saints. I'm Reiss Wegman. This is Maryville Tonight. We'll see you next time.